Hi guys, welcome back. This is episode 10. Uh, you've been with us since August, September of last year, and 10 long months of the AI universe and where it's taken us and where it will be taking us. Interesting times, and we said that we'd have a guest on this week, but we ran into some problems. We will have a guest on for sure, and we wanted to wait till that, but there's just so much going on right now that we can't afford to wait. We wanted to get the information out there. We wanted to get to everybody what we've been working on, and let Sid take over now if you
Yeah,
can.
there's always this. Thanks, Avyay. Yeah, welcome back, everyone. Episode 10. It feels great. We're actually in double digits. I think we're starting to feel like we're getting the hang of it. I think every episode is unique and different, but I think we get slightly better. So hopefully, you're starting to feel that way as well about our journey. And just programming note. It's the reason for the lack of guest is not because we don't have a list of guests who want to appear and are eager to appear on the podcast with us. It's just that the guest we really wanted to have and who will still be on had a last minute family emergency and he couldn't make it. So we're actually going to do something that's not unprecedented. We've done this once before where we've actually gone and done two episodes in the same month. We did that in January, I think, when we switched. That was literally the launch of, or at least the start of our Claude Code journey and how we sort of were blown away with it. So yeah, we're definitely going to have a guest, but it's going to be episode 11 or 10.1, depending on how you want to think of it. But yeah, so we're definitely there was just too much happening from the middle of June onwards for us to sort of just wait even another week because something else might just drop another week from now. So
Yeah, and
yeah.
I think a lot has changed since the last couple of days. I mean, I think the timing of this is quite good because a lot has changed in the last week. From the where we thought things were going, and the last time we actually spoke about this was when Fable had just come out, and we'd had just a glimpse of Fable, and got to use Fable a little bit. And now that story's changed a little bit, and it's taken a turn in a way we didn't expect at all at that time. Right now, we thought it was this great model, and a couple of days later, it was taken away from us. And
It's shocking. I mean, I think I'm blown away by the sheer um, scale of incompetence. I mean, it's Dario is a smart guy. There's no disputing that. He's really good at what he does. He's a good technologist, right? I mean, and as a fellow technologist, I sort of sometimes feel for him, but he's just either being allowed to entertain his worst impulses, or is just a really poorly handled rollout. This is the worst. This is no way to roll out something that you've been telling people is amazing, right? Like, so I would say the Fable rollout and all the sort of the amateur tactics that have been adopted since literally the last episode we recorded, right? The last episode we were poking fun at the fact that they're treating it like a fire sale. They're basically trying to use the same terminology as flash sales, bringing sort of the same weird energy of, making, trying to create an artificial sense of urgency around using a product by creating a fake sense of a scarcity. It's like, it's again, I'm not a marketing guy, but this is a well-worn tactic. People do it all the time. And Fable's firstly the delay and all the other stuff and how they built it out since March about how amazing it is and how it's finding kernel bugs. It was amazing, right? Like when we first used it for the
we
3 days
we
that we had
loved the
access to
model.
it.
We loved the model. I
We
mean,
do
we
love the
really
model.
loved
We
the
do love
model.
the model.
But we also said there was a lot of worry around it, right? About how proactive it was in doing its own thing and the capabilities of it. And since then, I mean, it's been a big gap, but we'll talk to you. They had a issue with the DOJ and Trump and everybody saying because Dario has a tendency, and I'm not sure what it is, but I think it's the way he's probably seen the industry, because he's been an engineer for a long time. He was with OpenAI before this, and he said GPT-2 was too dangerous to release at that point. So I mean, it's a pattern in what he believes is, building up hype or showing, saying that the model is very capable, when eventually the reality of it is that it's very capable, it's not doing something which you can't do already. And since then it's been nerfed, the usage limits have been taken down, and I feel like it's far less capable model. It hits the the fallback much more often. And I feel like they actually really had an opportunity to take advantage of this and grow their revenue, and become move to a point where it would be the leading model being used. Yeah. And you know from that, I think, where the scare tactics and everything, OpenAI and even Grok and Cursor. So post the SpaceX IPO, Cursor had been acquired by SpaceX, so it's not part of SpaceX. And they've launched a model known as Grok 4.5, and with Grok 4.5, GPT 5.6 is here. And I've used a lot of GPT 5.6, and I think that's been my primary driver. And Sid's primary driver has been Grok. And this all happened with a weird mistake because he was locked into a year subscription of Cursor,
Yeah.
which he didn't mean to do. And I think it
Yeah.
was a blessing in disguise because
100%. Before we get to that, I want to just basically go back to Fable one more time and how badly it's been handled. We've been seeing literally, and now everybody's sort of seeing there's a little bit of a stench of desperation coming. So just to recap for people who've been living under a rock, or who obviously are not as crazy about AI as Avyay and I, they re-released Fable and made it generally available to humans, or to ordinary humans. What, like a week ago, 2 weeks ago, 1.5 weeks ago,
I think it was the not the 1st of July.
4th of July or whatever,
4th of
something like that. Fourth,
July.
fifth, third, some
No,
some
because they
date.
extended from the 7th to the 12th. So it was the week of the
No,
7th, I
that
think.
was the first extension. So there was one sort of
It was the first. Sorry, it was the 1st of July. I
yes. So
remember because I was traveling.
first they basically launched, and they said you have till the 7th to use it. Is the way that the initial fire sale or the flash
And they said
sale.
50% of your weekly limits, not 100%
fifty
of the
percent
weekly.
of your weekly limits. You're not allowed to go even beyond that. So that was sort of okay, annoying, but fine. Okay, we believe you want to protect it. You think you like. We think that they thought that everyone would start using it and be like, oh my, of course I'm going to open my wallet, Mister Amadai, because of course here, take my money. And I think what's happened over the last 2 weeks is that first of all, people have been like, meh, it's good, or maybe it's amazing, but I don't really need it for everything, right? So it's the combination of the fact that people have realized that, and we'll come to the two other dark horses, which is really honestly upended everything. But I think just to close out the Fable rollout, it's literally been a disaster. There is no other way to skin this. There's no other way to spin it. This has been a disastrous rollout. They've managed their messaging or mismanage their messaging so badly, it's laughable. And the funny thing is, they always blink at the last minute. You get an email literally 4 hours or 3 hours before your
No,
limits
I
expire,
think,
and they tell you, oh, by the way, we've given you an extra week. Go enjoy. And
but
so
by
at
that
this
time,
point,
everybody's, and they've also been doing one thing which I really don't like is they've been trying to match the codex resets, but they don't reset the same thing with this codex. So what they do is they reset you to one day before your reset is anyway there. So they're actually not they're disguising these resets. So they don't actually mean to reset you. They're just doing it as a competition thing, as a competition metric, not
yeah,
like an actual like feel good reset or something which will actually benefit you. They therefore basically to not look bad to the competition. They don't want to look bad to to the customers. That's the main thing. But other than that, they're not very friendly as a company. I think the way OpenAI is handling these things, maybe it's compute shortages, maybe it's the culture, but whatever it is, I'm not trying to speak badly of them. They've done very good things. They've really changed how LLMs work now, because if it wasn't for Opus 4.5 and Opus 4.1 and Opus 3 and all of these different launches that they had, we wouldn't be where we are. And Fable has actually moved us further forward in the LLM race than any other model. But it's also actually hurt Anthropic more than it's hurt anybody else. Fable is actually the way they handle. They could have made this into the next GPT 5.6 or the 5 or the Grok 4.5. And I think the way that they rolled out Grok, the way Elon's being so vocal about it and taking feedback in is very nice. You'll see him on Twitter, and somebody was like, the cash price is too high, and Elon said, yes, maybe we should lower that. And he was like, he's very open to feedback, and they're very communicative, even if it's like a guise. It gives people this feeling of being involved as part of the company, and being a feeling of that, okay, you actually, there is somebody who will listen to us eventually, right? There is, our feedback doesn't go to a wall. And
Yeah.
I think that's what people want from Anthropic, and Anthropic has the ability to do that. Anthropic is definitely has the ability to take in that feedback and do better. But I think we should move on from the whole Anthropic
Yeah,
thing
the
to move
Anthropic
on.
thing is, I think we'll revisit obviously when we come to the next phase of our discussion. But just to now come back to the segue that I think Avya wanted me to make, 5 minutes ago, which is Grok and
GPT.
Grok and
Let's say we
GPT
make
have
the
literally,
Grok aspect
again,
of
head spinning moves as always. It truly is a moving target. Every week, our heads basically explode, and our mind is blown. Not because of I think now we found that I think at our gut level we know that capabilities are basically starting to saturate a little bit. But what I think is happening, what we really like, and what I think my gut, and I think you'll agree with this with this Avya, is that the race is now getting the gap is shrinking, right? So basically, the gap now between Anthropic, GPT is they're neck and neck, and and now it's a question literally of I think we're in a really really this is a golden
it's a
age
principle
for subscribers.
it's the complete principle of elasticity, right? Where you reach the elastic limit. I think we're approaching that with model capabilities where it's useful. And
Yes.
I wanted to add something here because I think it's very valuable. Is Grok 4.5 is the first model outside Opus and GPT 5.5 and any model which was able, in real terms, capability, where we felt it was enough.
Yeah.
And it was cheap. We tried GLM, we tried Kimi, we tried all of these models, and they weren't being able to do a certain benchmark which we have. It's an internal thing we figured out to determine the basic level of model intelligence. And I'll let Sid take it away because he designed this, and I think it's quite
No,
amazing.
no. I before I do any of that, I want to say that I'm feeling like a genius right now, and not because I was, but this goes back to like mid March or something, or mid April, where my 1 year prepaid Cursor subscription renewed, and it was $16 a month. $192 on my on my credit card, and I think I saw the charge happen like 3 days after. And this was in the middle of our infatuation with Claude Code. I think we were doing 80 to 90% of our work on Claude Code. I had a max plan. And I was like, oh my God, maybe I should just go back and, open a ticket and try to get my money back. And I think I kind of half heartedly did, but I didn't. And then at the time, I was like, maybe I should just leave this subscription. Maybe someday I'll
And we
come
said,
back.
yeah, we were basically like, at that point that I was also to said, like, you get
Yeah. And then,
$20 of more usage anyway. So you're paying 16. So you can, test out the different models. You can test out GLM. You can test out all of these models which come into the harness, and you can, even if you run out of your usage limits,
yeah.
we can try,
And
we
I
can go.
think And I think to Avya's credit, he said, Sid, because I was this close to getting an OpenAI Go subscription, not OpenAI, Open Code Go subscription, because that's what our friend and colleague Guinness likes to use, because that
I know.
gives you.
I kind of persuaded you away from it because
Yeah,
I
you
was
said,
like,
look, instead of doing that, why don't you just, you've got to paid up, you've literally paid up for this shit. This is your money that you're not using. I was being the passive gym subscriber from our analogy, a month ago. So I was
facts.
like, okay, let me dust it off. So, sure enough, I downloaded, I started using it. Obviously, we use T3 code, which gives you, access to all the providers. I already had a cursor provider. I just never actually activated it. And two things happen. Obviously, GLM 5.2 is very performant, but we did realize very quickly that it wasn't doing everything we wanted. But then somehow, as if by magic or providence or whatever, luck would have it, literally a week and a half ago, around the same time as all this was happening, this Fable kerfuffle, badly managed rollout. Obviously, GPT 5.6 is coming out,
The news in
and
the
Grok 4.5 is coming out. I mean, or maybe it's come out already, but it's starting to
Grok came out
basically.
first, and then 5.6 came out, and
Right,
then
but all the traction and all the buzz is happening, and of course, Avya is a buzz sort of sniffing machine. He knows exactly which way the wind is blowing,
I knew
and
like the
so
second it came out, like it's like before it hits it, we've got a.
and it was
Shirin and I have a WhatsApp chat which it probably gets flooded by my information, and
all your tweets, and I don't think I've read a single tweet that I haven't used in some way. But I was blown away, and I continue to be blown away by how performant it is. How, as you said, perfectly adequate and meets and exceed my expectations at a fraction of the cost. It is unbelievably good.
it is
The
it's
deal that you're getting with what they call first party models right now on Cursor, if you use Grok 4.5, you're literally using your spend per million tokens is about a tenth. And I did the math. I thought I was getting like 6 cents per token. Then I had to basically redo the math, and it was mostly because I was like, maybe I had done a very optimistic job. But even if it goes up to 10 times that, even if I'm at 60 cents a token, I'm still 10 times cheaper.
no,
So I was
but
100 times
that's the
cheaper.
whole the main thing about it. The beauty about Grok is it is priced at the price. It's priced 50% higher. No, not 50%. I think it's about 40% higher than GLM 5.2,
Yeah.
which is the most performant open source next model after all the models, all the Anthropic and OpenAI models.
Yes.
Now, what the ability they've done is they priced Grok at 1/5 of what GPT 5.5 is and 1/9 of what Fable is. So even if you're getting 90, I think you get 90% of the capability in Grok 4.5 for 1/10 the price or 1/5 the price, which you cannot beat. And I mean, it's the first model where you are like, okay, it is capable enough to the point where everyday work I can get done with this, and then I have my GPT and I have my Fable anyway. They can review it, they can look at things, they can make suggestions, but you have just a workhorse model which we've been looking for. Like, it's one thing which we've been really searching for is a workhorse model. We tried GLM, we tried all of these models, and back then it was 5.5, and the evolution of 5.5 is 5.6 Soul. I've used Soul quite a bit, and I feel like it's a very good model. And every complaint I had with 5.5 is gone.
Yes.
The only issue I have with it, it is a bit too thorough. You
Yes.
know, like to be used as an everyday model. I understand it if you want to invoke a large plan, or you want to do a large implementation, but for basic iteration, I feel like Grok is far better. And I think these models, as they get more capable, they become less useful for day-to-day usage. Like you'll hear
Yes.
from
Yes.
TOT3 and everything that this model can run forever. But certain times I want a model which is quick to do basic iteration stuff, because we're working on projects which require small changes and large changes, and I'm not, we even though we were token burning right at the start, like where I was building a lot, and we
Token
would
maxing is the word. We were trying to max our tokens. You were,
and where I was implementing large features at the same time, and doing a lot of sub agent work. Now it's become more focused work, because I feel like the complexity of the work has gone up with what we're trying to do, but it's also the ability for us to have a more perfect execution with multiple small iterations. And I believe that phases and mini phases and sprints, like what people used to call sprints in Jira, uh, Authasian, is what it's coming back. But now, rather than you having it for your engineers, you have it for your agents, right? And you're setting up your agents in certain ways. And I
yeah, no,
feel like,
absolutely. I think workflows are evolving at the speed of light. And just to close out, I think the GPT 5.6. So we'll get to in a coming segment why things are. I finally feel like I'm able to handle some of the chaos that's coming out of the frontier labs, because I'm starting to basically standardize and rationalize and stabilize my own way of working. So like, I'm able to absorb all this huge delta literally within a day or two, without actually having to upend my entire workflow, because of all of the work that we've done. Like, we put in a lot of hard work standardizing on things like T3 code, where T3 code is sort of a router. I mean, they're all routers. At the end of the day, model routers are
everything, yeah, everything is a
Model
model.
routers are like a minimum requirement and a must-have for any AI
Any
toolkit.
any
So
kind of harness you're using.
any kind of harness needs to be sort of model and provider agnostic. You should be able to have as many plugins as you like. So, of course, the model router that we use pretty heavily, but I don't use it exclusively. This is the other strange thing that I thought that, okay, I'd be on T3 code and I'd just use it exclusively for everything else. It turns out that it's not good at things that I've since built. Like I've built a skill that renders Markdown for me, and T3 code
You
doesn't
found it
support
much better
Markdown.
in found it much better in a terminal and GUI. Like,
Yeah, no, there's a bunch of GUI. So I've actually now switched over to when I do a certain reviews, I've actually started using Cursor again because Cursor does a great job rendering stuff.
and the this one thing I wanted to add. Sorry to interrupt you, Sid. It's our whole gripe with Cursor, and we've been critical of Cursor in a long time. And I said that if Cursor wants to survive, it needs its own model. And we'd said this about, I think, 6 months ago. It was six. It was episode 4.
Yeah,
We'd spoken about this, and even episode 2 and 3, we'd spoken about this in quite a lot of detail. And I said the only thing Cursor is missing is a model, because they have the data and they have the harness and they have built this harness before agents and during agents development, so they have actually the most understanding of how the harness should work. It
yeah,
has an inline editor. I just like the view. We loved using Cursor, and now Cursor's adopted more towards the T3 code, the codex, chat GPT codex, as we call it now, the name of chat GPT's app. And they've all evolved this GUI kind of workflow, but Cursor is still, I feel, the most fluid out of all of them to use. They just, they have a certain UX, UI, and like color code which is very cooperative. That's the best word I can come with.
no, you're right. I think Cursor's done. I think Cursor, it goes back to their DNA, right? Cursor forked VS Code and rewrote. They were the first IDE at the end of the day. They were the first of their kind. They literally said, okay, everyone's trying to basically tack on AI, you know, chat
Yes.
or whatever, agentic AI. Before even agentic AI was a thing, they were like, okay, the AI flavor needs to not feel tacked on, which is really what everybody was trying to do. Like, I was using JetBrains for a long time. I was basically a huge JetBrains guy. I used to use them for everything, and they were a really nice performant IDE. And before that, I was on Copilot, and of course, you had Copilot plugins now for everything. So Copilot was the sort of the initial AI assistant, but it felt very tacked on. It was not. It didn't have context, and of
It
course,
didn't have
back
that.
then we didn't even know what we were talking about. Context
It didn't
was
have that fluidity.
didn't have
That's
the purity. It didn't have the seamlessness. So Cursor, because they solved first for AI and giving AI as much context as possible, it's obviously clear that they've thought long and hard about user experience, which
and
is
then
why
actually
coming
there's
back to
more,
them feels great.
because the whole thing is, when they didn't have to focus on the model, which Anthropic and OpenAI had to focus on, they were focusing on the product, because the only lure they had at that time was the product. And if they had the product, they needed that's what they were trying to do. If you have the best product, it's why people are willing to pay API prices to use you. And for a long time, people were using Cursor. Like, I think it's only the last couple of months, 2 months, maybe 3 months, where Cursor hasn't got the usage it was getting before. But I've seen people running long horizon tasks. They've been trying to optimize the model usage. And a lot of people have been saying that the best harness to use these models in is Cursor, and they've been performing well. Which, I mean, I feel is right, because there's no cluttered context, there's no bloat. Now, Claude Code, as much of a great tool as it was, it's not used internally by Anthropic. It's not the main development tool for it. They have their own version, which is why you'll see bugs, you'll see bloat, and the desktop app for Claude and Claude Code is horrendous.
The less we say, the better.
That's where I leave it. It's horrendous, and I'd warned Sid, and Sid went in and tried it, and then Sid uninstalled it.
No, I didn't uninstall it. I still have it running, and the reason I have it running we'll come to in a second when
No,
we
but
talk.
at that moment, it just felt like you uninstalled it from your brain. You're like, I'm never
I
touching.
uninstalled. I think I used it for precisely 10 minutes, and then I said, okay, this is stupid. This is like come on, you guys built. You guys are talking about. You guys have the most performant AI model in the world, Fable. Mythos, and you built this. This is a piece of shit. I mean, and it's not getting any better. I mean, I
It's
think
definitely better.
if I was to rank them, I mean, Cursor is way up there. I mean, Cursor, T3 Code, PyDev. There's a whole bunch of really nicely
And these
performant
are
open source
independent.
models.
And T3 code is a small group of people running it.
Small group of people doing it.
And I mean, Anthropic has possibly every elite software engineer or brain there is right now. They've taken everyone,
Yeah. But
and
I mean, again, so Avya, you've not been around this world long enough. But big does not necessarily equal good. This
no,
is the
it
whole
doesn't.
reason why this is the whole reason why Google's been a one-trick pony literally since day one. They've only grown and added their features through acquisition. Microsoft famously would just basically generate bloatware, but it was always basically they would copy user experience from elsewhere, or they would buy it. And the code eventually got okay, but they were never trailblazers. You didn't, you were never you were never happy running code. So I think you and I both know now that Cursor and T3 and all of these, as you said, it's all about focus. Cursor's been only focused on user experience and software developer experience since day one. To their
And
credit, they've
the
not gone
main,
away from it.
the main thing is, I truly believe is the reason why Codex, Cursor, and T3 are in the position they are, is because they're used by their developers. The developers use them as their daily tools. And
Yeah,
if you're using something as your daily tools, it will definitely be better than a product you're building for someone else. Because I will put it this way: if you don't use it every day, you will not find the edge cases, you will not find the problems, you will not have the nitpick, of the small issues that bother you. And if these people are using it for their own development and it's their go-to tool and they're giving it to you, then that makes a big difference, because they optimize for issues they're running into, because they're doing a lot more work on these things than we are. And if you're using those things to evolve that, you will obviously have a better product, because that product is your everyday tool. And
yeah.
it's that old saying that iron sharpens iron. Like, if your harness is great, your model will perform better, right? And that's the
Okay.
beauty of it.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. Yeah, so currently we're back to having a love affair or at least a romance or an infatuation with Cursor. I think I would say it's 80% driven by the fact that they're giving Grok 4.5 away practically for nothing compared to especially other prices. And I
And
think
I think they're
everybody
not
knows that, right? I mean,
using
Elon realized it. The Cursor team knows it. So this is a very strategic and shrewd move on their part of creating these two-tier sort of billing models. They have a first party model where they have Cursor 2.5.
because
Composer 2.5 is okay. It's like whatever. It's a workhorse. It's sort of like a Sonnet. I'll use it, sure,
it's
but I'm
probably better
really
than
interested
Sonnet
in
5.
basically using Grok 4.5.
It's probably better than Sonnet 5. Sonnet 5 is like
It
probably one of
probably
the
is. I've
models
not
that
even
are.
used Sonnet 5. I barely
Oh
use
no,
Sonnet.
it's per task. It's more expensive than Fable, because it burns more tokens than any other model in existence.
This is
And
Composer.
this is Sonnet 5.
Oh,
So
Sonnet 5.
we haven't had a chance to speak. Oh, there was Sonnet 5 also, which actually completely disappeared because it was probably the worst model ever to be created.
Is that right? So that's yet another launch flub that
Yeah, the thing is that it was so bad that people forgot about it so quickly that it didn't even make it to the news.
I
I mean,
remember reading an email from the Anthropic guys about Sonnet 5. That's
and
so
then I
interesting.
sent you a thing where it was $40 for Sonnet 5 and Fable took $32. And
That's
they're
crazy.
like, how do you make a model which is smaller, more expensive than a model which is priced at five, six times it?
That's
You know,
shocking.
and I think this is where we come into what has actually happened and what Elon has been able to do. And one thing I really want to focus on is the pricing. The pricing is that if Elon and SpaceX is being able to offer this model at this cost, it shows us that GPT and Opus and Fable were all highly overpriced at that.
Overpriced. Huge
And
margin.
it was taking advantage of the moment, right? It was taking advantage of what the time when they had a duopoly, pretty
Yep.
much. And
Yep.
these subscription plans are actually making them money. They're not that subsidized, which we said a while ago, and I think we stick to that. And I totally believe that if a 1.5 trillion parameter model such as Grok 4.5 is running, so the Opus was around one something trillion parameters. GPT 5.2 is slightly larger, it's around 2 trillion parameters. But I'm saying these models are not that expensive to run. And the thing is, they're mostly the development cost of them. And now that's falling sharply. So I think the issue with Anthropic and OpenAI, and what I think is not one thing which we don't really talk about is the economic landscape of this. It's quite bad, is because Anthropic is going to struggle to reach the same revenue highs as they have this last year. From January to July, the revenue highs they've reached and the amount of money they've been able to bill people for, with first Opus 4.5, then 4.6, 4.7, 4.8, and now Fable and Mythos, is actually going to decline. And I believe that they've reached the top of what their revenue should be compared to SpaceX and um, OpenAI. Because the one thing I think SpaceX has over everybody is compute. They are renting compute to Anthropic without sweating, right? Which is a big deal. And they have 5 times larger cluster, which they use for Grok for training of the new model, which is going to be coming out, Grok 5,
Yeah,
I think, which is the 2
yeah,
trillion parameter model.
yeah,
So, I mean, who owns compute in the long run will become king, because the model will become commoditized, is what
yeah.
starting to see. The
Well,
model
I
layer is.
think I think to add to that, I feel like I think there's there's a consistent through line. There's an Elon playbook at play here, right? The Elon playbook is if you own both distribution and sort of a technology that you can price very, very aggressively. He's done this with Starlink. He's obviously done this with Tesla. Then you have a successful business, and I think so. He's very disciplined about doing that, and he's okay spending billions, of dollars.
He knows timing. Like, one thing he
He
gets
knows
very good.
timing. So I again we're I think we've reached a point in time now where most of us now view compute or even models or even inference as sort of like an interchangeable again, if we're talking electricity, right? Like, I feel to me
Like a phone
that
plan.
that literally, yeah, maybe it's a phone plan too. It's ultimately these things are interchangeable. We're coming to skills in a second. I can't wait to tell you the things that I'm doing with my skills, but I'm reaching a point now where I can literally stop a session midway, save my progress, switch providers, and continue. So effectively what that is proving to me is that these providers are completely interchangeable. Like between 4. Grok 4.5, Opus 4.8, and Claude 5.6 Terra, whatever they call it, not Sol, but the one lower than that, right? I can literally interchange between any of these models and not skip a beat, right? What's that saying? The people that win now, the only way to win now this game is obviously price. That's the first win, right? The first dimension that any user is going to evaluate is price. And then maybe secondary, a distant second or third is what else are you offering, right? So I think combined with, if Cursor continues to innovate on the IDE and the developer tools axis, and they do it even a slightly bit faster than both Codex and Claude, Cursor is going to win the race. Cursor might have already won the race.
I, I have one thing to add here in all of this, and I mean, I thought about it quite a lot, and I've been looking at all of this news for a long time now, and understanding where people are coming from and what is actually hype and what's reality, and that's what we've been breaking here on the podcast mainly, is that what is actually useful and what is just there, what is just in the air. And one main thing that I've felt over this last 10 days since Grok has been out, and then we've been seeing all these Fable changes and GPT 5.6, is that we've reached a point where I think the public is going to start waking up. Right now we're at a very developer centric, power user centric level of understanding, and I think the common man's understanding of these models is going to start happening, because I already see cost coming into the word cost appearing a lot. It's expensive. People are more worried about how much they're spending on AI. And now the comparison, which 12 months ago was the opposite, that one engineer, a cloud code plan is $200, but an engineer is this. Now it's like spending $100,000 in tokens, and Meta spend what, like, I think 2 billion or something on tokens. and where did it, and what is the cost of an engineer? And they're saying that okay, engineers are better, but you also have to start monitoring all of this. And I
Yeah.
think let's move into the segment of skills, because
Yes.
think I think this, what I want to say, will continue after the skills, because you got something very, very exciting. But
Yeah.
uh,
No, I.
I think I'm gonna let Sid take it over with the skills, because we've been using skills for a long time, and I was a skill addict for a long time, and then now Sid's taken it over with some really, really, really cool skills. And there's one skill in particular which Sid will come to, which I think has been my favorite, because it's helped us understand model intelligence to a level which was not measurable before, which benchmarks didn't show.
Yeah. So thanks. Yeah, I'll say that before I get into skills, I want to also talk a little bit about Alex Karp's rant against everything. Basically, he's basically saying, look, the whole AI ecosystem is completely off. They're doing it wrong. Everybody is an idiot. You're basically giving away your crown jewels to the AI companies. The whole ecosystem is messed up. Of course, he has a vested interest in pushing back, because obviously he's feeling under threat from. He's the guy who runs Palantir, by the way. So his whole thing is about proprietary, building your intelligence, whether it's what they like to call ontologies, and your memory and your relationships. Everything has to be kept on site. Institutional knowledge should be preserved, because those are your crown jewels. Those are literally the most important things related to your company and your business operations. And to some extent, when you try to do this math where you say, as Avya was saying, that a $200 max subscription is still orders of magnitude cheaper than having an engineer, you're missing the point, because an engineer is not feeding a direct line to another company where your institutional insights are being sort of fed into the next generation model that they have. No matter how much an engineer you might be underpaying an engineer, but the worst case, if you're not paying your engineers enough, most likely they'll either leave, they'll do a shoddy job, or they might moonlight. But even the moonlighting portion is not going to be like selling your secrets to
And
others, because there's too much of a risk to them.
we've spoken about this today. We were speaking about something about how there's a lot of information on how Grok build is stealing end secrets and downloading repositories, and it's in their terms of service, so it's not against the
That's
rules. I
right. So
mean,
you're almost giving away your
and I
ability
turned
to
it on for
counters
yesterday.
to them.
The privacy setting in Cursor, we
Is
went in and
default. Yeah, yeah. We found it. I found there was a legacy privacy setting that would
but we
essentially take all
updated it
my code
way
and,
too
and
late.
train the models, and I had to turn it off just 3 days ago. So the bottom line is, I think I've been uncomfortable about this for a long time. We've felt that there was something off about this, the way the world is sort of the place we've reached. But I think thankfully, this is the thing that Avi and I are both noticing, is that the pendulum is slowly maybe starting to swing back. People are realizing, number one, that there's not going to be wholesale layoffs. You can't replace a senior engineer. You can't
No,
replace a senior anybody, or even a mid-level person, somebody who's actually spent time in your company, learning your processes, creating a cognitive map of your, not only your code, but the way your code interacts with everything. Like obviously every company has a customer, right?
as a customer.
Essentially any business, in the Western civilization, is all about offering a service or a product, generating value, and then extracting that value from the customer. People are the one who realize how the subtle relationships there happen. Of course, you can start to train agents to maybe start to do a little bit of offload, cognitive offload, which we've talked about. And we warned against cognitive surrender a few episodes ago. And we continue to maintain that that's the worst thing that can happen. But now we've realized that cognitive surrender actually ends up also giving all the cognition to these 5 or 6 companies, which is also bad, right? So that's why I wanted to basically start with that Alex Karp
And one
brand.
more point on this: the reason we actually stopped, we haven't been using Fable much, and um, Sid and I both felt this very deeply, and we said it in D1 when we started using it. That is, does it's overeager. and that's the thing, and it's eager to do its own thing, and maybe it's too smart for its own good. It doesn't follow instructions that well because
Yeah.
it thinks it knows better. And like Sid had a plan, and it said review the plan first, then review it with Codex, and then I will tell you when to implement. And it just started implementing the plan and doing the review in the background. And what I
Yes.
feel like, what I feel like is like, I think yes, it's a very smart model, and it's there, it's got its use, but it's not the work model, right? It's not useful for UI or anybody else. It's probably useful for people who are trying to find exploits. It's probably useful for people who are trying to solve very, very hard problems. And it's useful for us in very small settings where we're trying to find a bug, or we're trying to find that like some critical break in our production. And even
Yep.
then there is 5.6 which catches a lot of those issues. So I mean, the niche which Fable is occupying at this point is a very small one and shrinking. And one more model I wanted to mention, because we haven't mentioned it, and we talked about all of these models before we get into skills, and our big project we've been working on is Muse Spark. So it's the coding model from Meta, which has come out, and uh, I there hasn't been we haven't had a chance to use it, and I want to use it because people are saying that it's good, that it's at the level of Grok, but this is like the same chatter I've heard about GLM being able to be as good as Opus, and it hasn't got to
It
that
hasn't
level.
borne out. Yeah, it hasn't borne
So, I
out.
mean, are we going to try it? And when we have our guest on, we'll have a little segment on Muse Spark as well, because I don't want to leave anything out, right? We're here to inform you about
Yeah,
what's
we want to
there.
be exhaustive and thorough. I agree. Yeah.
Yes,
No,
and
so let's jump straight into skills because unfortunately I have a hard stop today, so we're not going to be able to go beyond
yeah.
maybe
So,
55 minutes
Sid,
today.
Take it over with the skills. I
No,
had some.
I would love for us to have a back and forth here because again, skills are something again just for a recap for all of our listeners. Skills have come out of Anthropic. Again, Anthropic remains the most innovative in terms of coming up with thoughtful and reusable. And they've definitely the reason I still like them, I haven't taken them off my speed dial. Is that they are committed to open sourcing stuff. So even though they are somewhat, bad citizens when it comes to having, not respect, they want to create their own Claude.md. So they've got this hubris which I don't like. But at the end of the day, they did introduce skills. I don't know what the actual status of the skills.io standard is. The bottom line is a skill is just something that is reproducible. It's written in Markdown, and what I love about it is it's literally, I think in my head now, the way in
Very
which you can
accurate.
standardize your interaction with any LLM. So you're sort of creating a layer between of repeatability and certainty, that so that now you can actually say, okay, I use the same, I invoke the same skill. If I want to get something done, I invoke a skill, and then I can sort of subjectively evaluate how a model is doing because I know that when I invoke that same skill for a similar task with a different model, I got this behavior. So I'm really liking the reason. For that reason, I'm liking skills, and obviously now that I've started using them, I've come up with a few skills that I really like. The first skill I want to talk about is this is a skill that I created again 2 weeks ago, just in a burst of creativity. I think Avyay was traveling, so he and I don't really, didn't really get a chance to speak, and I was just sort of sitting and writing it out. So I created a skill that I call the cognitive reload skill. I don't know if we introduced it. Did we introduce it
Uh,
last?
we hadn't really talked about it a
Yeah,
lot.
so the cognitive reload skill was just again us talking, again following up on the point that we don't want to ever have cognitive surrender. So what's the opposite of cognitive offload? And to me, it felt like cognitive reload. It's like basically Neo getting his helicopter flying skill or kickboxing skill injected back into him through the Matrix. Obviously not nearly as Neuralink as that, but I think what I've done is I've said there is now, in my view, three distinct phases. If you're going to do AI enabled coding, and you've decided, as we have, and we decided about a month or 3 months ago, that we are going to rely on all the code that AI is generating. So essentially, that bridge is being crossed, where I don't feel the need to review every line of code that AI is generating. I nevertheless want to continue to stay on top of it. And I know that when I was writing every line of code, I'm typically not writing every line of code even then. Back in the day, 5 years ago when I was writing lines of code, I was typically cutting and pasting and copying and pasting from a bunch of Stack Overflow messages, or I was basically
You
looking
had
at
and you had your
other
bank
parts.
also. You had a bank of reusable functions that you were using.
Exactly. And you were using open source, you was using inner source. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that was happening back in the day. But I think there was a mental model because you were with the code, you were spending time, almost every day in the code. You had a mental cognitive model that was very sharp and that actually had a shelf life. So if you hadn't looked at the code, even though if I mean, I can tell you this for certainty. I wrote code 10 years ago. If somebody was to ask me to debug it today, I'd say, I'm sorry, I can't. Code is alien to me. I might have written it 10 years ago. I still
It's
need to basically study it.
it's like everything, right? I mean, when you're in the moment, and to emphasize skills and what they are is actually it's like a quick it's a shortcut button, right? You're used to typing that prompt every time. It is a control B. It is basically an instruction which you just follow, like how when you even have a quick button on Alexa or your home button on your phone where you can quickly unlock your car or it's the same thing. It's an instruction which is just being played through a button. It's being played to machine. So it's the same thing. It's instructions. It's like a button for an LLM. And when you invoke that skill, it ensures repeatability. And what repeatability gives you is it gives you an understanding of how these models are behaving, which is very, very important.
Yes.
And it
Yeah.
talk
No. So just to finish my initial thought, the cognitive reload skill, which I'm going to come to the second skill that we wrote, but the first skill I wrote, which I now love, is it allows you to basically reload your cognition specifically with the most recent change. So if you're following sort of most of the best practices talk about how you want to create either a git tree or a feature branch, and you have a ralph loop or a goal or something where you spend, let's say, 30 to 40% of your token budget for the day on planning, right? And planning is a good idea. You want to write and refine plans. We've already talked about adversarial review, where you
Yes.
maybe have Claude write the plan and then Codex review the plan, which is still, by the way, a really important step in my book. I cannot stress enough where I had Fable write a plan and Saul review it, and it found 10 blockers in the plan. So,
And this is it. That the adversarial review, I think we're writing a skill for it, and it'll be available for everybody in the way we
that's right.
use it.
Yes,
But
yes.
I
I've
believe,
actually used that skill yesterday.
I believe that the smarter models such as Fable and GPT for now will should be used for planning and reviewing. I think the
Absolutely.
workhorse model should be Grok, where you
Yeah,
are not spending unlimited money. And what this allows you to do is allows you to have three $20 plans and get the benefit of all three, rather than having a
exactly.
$100 plan.
Yeah, but just to finish the cognitive reload. So now, if you say you have $100 worth of inference budget for the week or the day or the task, you should apportion it in the following way. You should spend $40, I think, on planning. You should spend maybe $20 to $30, not more,
On
on
execution.
implementing, because you can do it with low cost models, right?
Yeah.
We now know that low cost models are actually pretty good. You can spend another $10 to $15 on review. Review can be done with slightly more performant models or even the same ones. And then your last $20 to $30, I think I've totaled up to 100,
Yes.
should be spent on cognitive reload. Cognitive reload is a specific type of reload which I think is unique, where you're not trying to review the code along any sort of standard or spec axis. Okay, all you're
Yes.
doing is you're saying, "Hey, I was out for a week. You're the senior engineer. Let's go into a whiteboard. Tell me what you've done over the last week." And so that I can actually know, I can be on the same page as you as a collaborator or maybe as a
And the
manager.
beauty the
As
beauty of this cognitive reload is because what you start understanding, you also understand how the LLM is thinking, which
exactly.
is a beauty. I mean, I haven't mentioned it this today. I had this thought, it just came back to me. But when I was using the cognitive reload, it gives you an insight into the personality of the LLM beyond what you just understand from implementation. And
That's
that's
true.
so beautiful because then you
That is
understand what it looks at, how it looks at the code, what it's understanding, what it's not understanding, and what it's not just giving you the reload of what it's been built. It's also giving you an understanding of what the model is like, which is it's a subconscious understanding, but I think it's equally important. And I think that it tells you. and subconsciously it steers you into making better decisions with the model.
No, 100%. And I think the other thing that I love about the cognitive reload skill, when I run it, when I do it, I'm now doing it about once or twice. I'll spend maybe 8 or 10% or maybe 60% of my time. So I'll do one day of sort of just heads down planning and execution and implementation and maybe code review, and we'll get to the deploy part. But then I will then spend another half day just doing reload, right? And what we've also done is that with the reload skill, we've actually said, look, put some artifacts onto the put some badges onto the our repo. So in
Yes.
much the same way as you can actually have a repo that's saying, it's passing 99% of the tests, right? We've all seen repos have badges. Badges are now a thing. They've been a thing for like 10 years. We now
Yes.
have reload. We now have cognition badges, which tell you how well a software, a repo that's maybe 99%, agentic generated, has at least one human, maybe more, who understand what's actually in the code. So the cognition level of the human, which we call HITL, human in the loop cognition, there's a subdirectory now that we've created that actually stores all these artifacts, and we think it's pretty cool. Anyway, so coming to the second skill, I wrote another skill, and that was basically a deploy skill again. Agents are really good at agentic AI is very good, especially at creating prototypes and MVPs. Now we all have this problem where an MVP starts to feel like, okay, we have to move this to production really quickly, and so the TMT agent deploy skill
I
is
think
really
it's I
closing the
I
gap.
personally think it's an amazing skill, because I know what Sid was trying to do, because he does this very well, like the deploy. It takes some time to deploy and everything, and it was the same set of instructions, and Sid turned it into a skill, and uninadvertently he made it into something which is much more than just a skill. Is what you start realizing, and
It's a
you start
benchmark.
realizing
I mean, we've turned it into a benchmark, and I think the benchmark
that is a
part is,
real world benchmark.
yeah,
It's
no,
a very fine line in intelligence. It's like an IQ test where
correct.
if you're if you're even a percent off, it won't succeed, right? It's
That's right. Yeah, and we actually interestingly found that GLM 5.2, even though it scored whatever 79 on the SWE bench,
got
failed.
stuck.
It just failed miserably. It was not able to figure it out. Grok 4.5 passing, flying colors. Obviously, Soul 5.6, and of course
5.5
4.8 and
and
Mythos,
Fable.
Fable. They all do it. They know how to do
Of
this,
course.
but it's a complicated skill with a bunch of resources and a very interesting loop, where it wasn't able to. It just basically GLM just basically went into sort of this infinite loop. It just became a little. It went into analysis paralysis, and then I gave up after about 10 minutes. I was like, okay, you have to stop, dude. I think we have to
No, we
stop
had
this.
to stop it because it was just burning. Like it burned like $12, and then it did nothing. So I mean, it was. I mean, that and in a way, it showed us measurable intelligence. And Sid just today was saying that I was using the deploy skill, and I felt a little stutter with Grok, and I felt like maybe the
Yeah.
intelligence is falling a little bit,
I
and
mean,
that's
so yeah, Grok was able to finish it. So at the end of the day, Grok motored its way through it, but it's almost like they were quantizing it on the back end, and with these complex skills that maybe are not part of any test bench, so they're not optimized for them or pre-trained or even post-trained. If you're not running at the right level of quantization and full power,
it's like
you start
it's
to see hiccups.
it's a height limit. If you're under that limit, it will not work. And
That's right.
it's a basic level of it's for us. It's the minimum intelligence threshold for a workhorse model, for a model to be used in real world work, which where you're doing a lot. And this skill, I think, and I mean, all to Sid's credit, I didn't really have much to play with this skill at all, but it's helped us understand in a different way the level of intelligence these models are getting to, and the level of useful intelligence. And now we've been able to draw a fine line, and I think we're going to start calling it something. We're going to call it the moving targets approved models, and these are going to be the models that we feel are good enough to do these or don't fail these
Well,
tasks.
I'm actually going to use it as a perfect segue into the last thing that we're building, which we've actually built. We've actually released it internally, and we're testing it, and we're really excited to bring it to everybody as part of another offering that we're building. It's called the AI Sommelier. We actually hit upon the AI Sommelier idea in our last podcast, where we're like, look, what we really need as an AI is a sommelier, because literally in much the same way as that there are so many wine growing regions of the world, and every wine growing region has providers, and every provider or every vineyard has a grand crew, and it has, everything all the way down to the house Chianti, or the, whatever the basic appellation. A sommelier's job is to tell you which wine pairs well or is adequate for which course. And we
And I
think that
love
the AI,
this.
sorry.
I love the AI Sommelier because the way it came about is it just it's the moving targets. We were just doing our usual work, and I mean Sid was talking about wine, and we just sat talking about wine, and it came to us in that moment that there's a cost crisis with AI models. Nobody
Yes.
knows what you're using, and we figured out that you could track how much you were using it because we used to do slash status, and it told us how much API usage you were doing. So we were like, what if we could track all of this and suggest the best model to
Yes.
use for each task with the intelligence limit and everything. And all of this led us to what we call AI Sommelier, which is our way of finding the best model for the best job and
Yeah.
making sure every dollar you give these companies is being utilized. And are
Absolutely.
you utilizing your money? And it's the best way to look after the money you have, because I truly believe that if you're giving them a penny, you should be using that penny, because they're otherwise it's just like a lost gym membership, right? You're getting no benefit. And are you utilizing the subscription? Are you going to be utilizing that subscription? What is the actual utilization? And is it worth it for you to even have that subscription at $100 or this $20 plan, which is the best subscription, which is the best model? And you see a lot of these companies moving towards cheaper models like Quen and everything for their production, like Airbnb, now Microsoft. And I feel like this is the perfect time for us to work on something we're very passionate about, and we this is what the moving target is initially there for,
And
sharing
yeah,
knowledge.
just to close out, I mean, absolutely. And I think that I put my money where my mouth is, and I think I'll say the results, the proof is always in the pudding. So, in my case, because I started dog fooding the hell out of the AI sommelier, I was able to essentially get an idea of where my inference spend was happening. The thing about the gym membership analogy, and the thing about having these fixed price subscriptions, was how much you're spending already. Like, you're spending 120, 100 plus. In my case, it was 100 plus 20 plus 16. So $136 was going out of my pocket every month. What the AI sommelier allowed me to see was how efficiently and how much utilization I was actually doing, what my utilization level for each of these three memberships was.
It was, and I think Claude, you were in the red in the
I was in the
last.
red. I was in the red, and I could
So I
easily
mean,
downgrade
API, the
to.
API usage would have been cheaper for you than the actually
Well,
having the plan.
I was only able to switch off, and by the way, that's what it is. This is another momentous moment in our journey. I've
AI
switched
Sommelier
back
actually
from
allowed us to
Max.
switch on.
Yes, I've gone back from max, which is 100 to 20. So I'm now down to $60 a month spend. And hopefully next month when we meet, I will continue to be at 100 at the $60 spend, coming back with some really great numbers. But I think to me, the most operative number now that every CFO of a mid-sized software company, or even a mid-sized any company, should be tracking is your effective cost per million tokens. And maybe you can break it up into input and output, but generally nobody does. And that
No,
number is really what you should be living and dying by.
yes.
And minimizing that and getting that down should be essentially your one of the key sort of key metrics for your success.
And I think that's where we leave it, because it's been uh, a good episode packed with everything we wanted to do. And we have a tendency to ramble, and I know Sid has a hard stop today, but I wanted to say that please look forward to what we have working with AISOM. I think it's really something very extensive that we're working on, and we spend a lot of time and thought on it. And I truly think it'll be a tool which people can really utilize, and it's a way for you to access our knowledge all the time. We It's not just on the podcast. It allows you to understand the cost to benefit ratio at any time.
Yep,
And
and that's the vision for this product. Stay tuned. We'll obviously be talking more about it on future episodes. But I do have to jump. So thank you so much for spending another hour with us. We really
and
appreciate it.
thank you for listening for 10 months. I think double digits is a big goal that we've
Big
arrived to.
milestone.
And I think we're going to continue, and I think we're just getting started, because I think we've just picked up a stride with where we want to be. And thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed listening, and we'll see you very soon.